This screencast, we're going to talk about two basic things, and that's negative reinforcement and punishment. And the thing is that these are two of the most confused terms in psychology: negative reinforcement and punishment. Now, in class, we're going to be talking about reinforcement. We'll also talk a little bit about negative reinforcement, so you may have already heard me preach on this one just a little bit, but I'm going to cover it just a little bit here, and then we're going to compare it with punishment. The thing to remember about reinforcement: anytime you see the word reinforcement, immediately know that it's going to increase the probability of a particular response. So whatever it happens to be, and that doesn't matter if it's positive or negative reinforcement, reinforcement always increases the probability of a particular response. So positive reinforcement you think of as doing something right and somebody applauds you, compliments you, you get a reward, something of that nature for it. Well, then that's going to entice you to do it again. It's going to increase the likelihood you do the behavior again. Negative reinforcement, it's not the same as punishment now. Okay, negative reinforcement is going to increase the probability that you do a particular behavior, but you do it in order to avoid something unpleasant. So you're doing something you're more likely to do something in order to avoid something unpleasant. You're driving down the street, you see a police car up on the side, and you slow down and you do the speed limit. You don't do it because it's fun, you do it because you want to avoid getting a ticket. That's negative reinforcement. If you go to work and you don't go for the enjoyment of it, instead you go to work because you know that if you don't, you're going to get in trouble or you're going to get fired, that's negative reinforcement. You get to class on time. Why? Well, not because it's your favorite thing to do, probably, but you get to class on time because you want to avoid the penalty of whatever the tardy policy calls for. So that's negative reinforcement. Okay, you're doing something. You're increasing the likelihood that you do something in order to avoid something unpleasant. Okay, that's negative reinforcement. Now, I'm going to skip something here. We're going to go on. Let's talk about punishment. Punishment, otherwise known as aversive conditioning. If you see that term aversive conditioning or anything about aversive, that's punishment. Okay? Punishment, basically, we're talking about through pain or punishment or something unpleasant. All right? Now, the key difference here that you have to remember: punishment decreases the likelihood of a particular behavior occurring again. Okay, so, most of the time, punishment's going to occur after a particular behavior, and it's going to decrease, the punishment is going to cause a decrease in the likelihood that you're going to do that behavior again. So if you talk back to your parents and your parents ground you, or they spank you as a little kid, or whatever, they take your allowance away, that's going to decrease the probability that you do that behavior again. Okay, you get mad as a little kid and you kick the dog, and your parents see it and they punish you. Okay, so you're going to be less likely to kick the dog again. Okay, or the dog may end up biting you, and that's a punishment in itself. So either way, but punishment decreases the likelihood that behavior is going to occur again. Now, punishment and negative reinforcement, not the same thing. Always remember. With reinforcement and with punishment, we have both positive and negative. And again, these terms get confusing, but they do make sense. Think of it this way, okay? Positive and negative do not mean good and bad. In this situation, positive and negative, what they mean is that it's just like math. You're going to either add something or you're going to subtract it. Okay? So, for example, let's go through this chart here. Positive reinforcement. Okay? Let's say that you do something and you get a reward for doing it. It's going to increase the likelihood you do that behavior again. Okay? Now, let's talk about negative reinforcement. Okay? You're doing something in order to avoid or remove, take away something unpleasant. Okay? So you don't want to get a ticket, so you slow down as you drive past the policeman. Now, let's talk about punishment. Positive and negative punishment. Positive punishment. Let's say that little Johnny hits the kid next door, and so the parents spank Johnny. Now, spanking was not something that existed prior to this event. Okay, it was not in the equation. So we are adding the spanking. Okay, so that is positive punishment. Now, it's still designed to decrease the likelihood they do the behavior again. Negative punishment is you're taking something away. So Johnny hits the neighbor, and so what you do is you put Johnny on timeout, or you take away his favorite toy for a week, or something of that nature. You're removing something from the environment. That's negative punishment. So, for example, spanking is a positive punishment. Timeout is a negative punishment. Again, it doesn't mean good, bad. It just means you're either going to add something or you're going to take it away. One of the two. All right? Now, one other thing that I want to talk about in terms of punishment, and this is one of those deals where B.F. Skinner, we're going to talk about Skinner in class a lot. B.F. Skinner one time said that the problem with people in America is that we have too much negative reinforcement and too much punishment, and not enough positive reinforcement. And that may be true. A lot of times punishment is misused. Let's talk about 5 golden rules that you need to follow if you are going to use punishment. Okay? First golden rule for using punishment is it needs to be severe enough to cause some kind of discomfort. Okay? Now, by that, what I mean, for example, a teenager. Let's say that a teenager gets mouthy with their parents, and the parent says, "Hey, that's it. I've had enough of you tonight. Go to your room. I don't want to see you or deal with you the rest of the evening." So they confine you to your room. Now, you go up to your room. You've got television with all kinds of cable access. You've got your phone. You've got your iPod. You've got your computer. You've got everything you need to have a wonderful evening. And your parents have just told you that they're not going to bother you the rest of the night. Folks, that's not punishment. That's heaven. Okay? You have just been rewarded. Now, they meant to punish you, but by basically making the punishment such as it wasn't really punishing. So remember, golden rule 1, it has to be severe enough to cause some kind of discomfort. Now, if they take your phone away for a couple days, that hurts. Okay, that would be punishing. Okay? Secondly, second golden rule, the punishment has to be consistent. If the punishment is called for on day 1 and it's carried out, well then if you do the same thing on day 3, you should be punished for the same thing as well. Okay, it needs to be consistent. The timing, that's rule number 3. The punishment needs to occur as soon after the behavior as possible. Remember, one of the big rules of learning and conditioning is the principle of association. If 2 things occur close together in time or space, we connect them. If Johnny gets in trouble at 8 o'clock in the morning And so, he got in trouble for doing something, but then he's not punished until, let's say, that evening, and parents say, "Hey, Johnny, remember, you did such and such." Well, that's not as effective, okay? Especially for little kids, because they have a hard time remembering that long, as if the punishment would have occurred immediately. Okay, when you're going to use punishment, it needs to be as soon after the behavior as possible. Rule number 4, golden rule number 4: punishment needs to fit the crime. Okay, it needs to fit the behavior. So, I hate littering. I hate when people litter, and you'll be driving down the street and you'll see somebody throw a Coke can out of a window or something like that, and that drives me crazy. And I wish they could be arrested, thrown in jail for the rest of their lives. That would clean up America real quick. But that's probably too severe. So just remember, the punishment needs to fit the crime. Rule number 5: if you follow all the other rules, this is a biggie, okay? There needs to be some type of good behavior that's both explained and maybe even rewarded, especially with kids as they're growing up, okay? If Johnny, poor little Johnny, gets in a situation where he doesn't realize what to do, he does something, and then he gets punished for it, he may not realize that he had other options. So, he can still be punished for whatever it is, but then also explain to Johnny, say, "Hey, here's what happened, here's what you did, here's what you need to do." Okay? Think about this. If you would have taken this action instead of what you did, not only would you not have been punished, but you might have even been rewarded. Okay? That's the key. Okay? So 5 golden rules to punishment. Now, key for this lesson: remember the difference between negative reinforcement and punishment. I guarantee you will have questions on the AP exam. I guarantee you'll have questions on my exam, because these are, again, 2 of the most confused terms in psych. Know the difference. Reinforcement always increases a response. Punishment always decreases a response. And know the difference between the positives and negatives. All right?